Now we move on to our first featured poet of the afternoon, and both Graham Buchan and Jenny Mitchell have got quite impressive CVs. Graham has written and directed films, factual films for TV, government departments and industry, and used to picture edit TV news. He's published 4 books, some are on sale this afternoon, and a pamphlet of poetry, several short stories in prestigious magazines, dozens of film and art reviews. He's read his poetry in London, Southern England, New York, Austin, Vancouver, Nicaragua, France and Iraq. And now, the King and Queen. Welcome back, Graham Buchan.
First of all, big thank you to you, Patrick, for not just for inviting me here, but for running what must be, I guess, the longest poetry event in London.
30 years, I think. Only apples and spades have been going on.
Ah, them.
Yeah.
That deserves a round of applause.
I think so. My first poem addresses the difficulties of being a creative artist in a dictatorship. In bed with Shostakovichs. I listen over and over to Shostakovich's Fourth, that wild, hairy, unkempt teenager of a symphony, the problem child, the one he had to withdraw after the debacle of Lady Macbeth, because he knew it was eclectic and it was formalist, and it would have incurred the wrath, and there would have been a knock at night, the silent car and the gulag, the White Sea Canal, or a bullet in the basement of the Lubyanka, because all of Meyerhold, Carnes, Zilyev, Solotinsky, Mayakovsky, Mandelstam had been, or were to be, tortured, shot, suicided, or grounded to death. And I listen over and over to Shostakovich's Fourth, which lay hidden, the wild genius of it, for 25 years, until well after Uncle Joe's death, and what a fucking holiday that should be, the great leader and teacher, the cunt. So I listen to Shostakovich's Fourth, the huge, wild, disparate aggregation of it. The young composer assembling chunks like bric-a-brac, jamming it together, some lyrical, tender, some vulgar, some jaunty, impish, playful, some terrifying, some utterly, utterly, despairingly sad. The whole wild bag of it. A piece I've known for decades, and sometimes loved, and sometimes railed against, and was frustrated by. But now, I think I get it. I think I get it. It coheres, it persuades, and this is the soundtrack to the 20th century. The whole bloody 20th century, which I think of as my century. My century, because I feel increasingly like a guest in the 21st. And I listen to the whole hour-long, slammed-together, brutalist mass of it. And as it finally winds down, after all the tumult, the shrieking, the bombast, the huge sudden climaxes, the shrill piccolos, the pretty dances, as it finally winds down, there is plaintive woodwind over a pulse of throbbing lower strings, still alive, still joyful, children in a meadow. And suddenly, again, the juggernaut, trampling through everything, grinding through everything, obliterating everything, loud, brash, unrelenting. It sweeps through in grimacing triumph and leaves what? The pulse, again, but slower, like a failing heart. And at the very end, the Celesta, the beautiful, ethereal Celesta, a rising fragile figure on the celesta. And at the very, very end, the very, very end, a lone, weak, muted trumpet, shallow breath, and again, finally, at the very, very end, the fragile, frail, forlorn celesta, and everything that was, civilization, creativity, courage, love, all has expired. So Shostakovich survived. He very nearly didn't. He was summoned to the offices of the NKVD, sat in an antechamber for 2 or 3 hours, I think, waiting to be called in, interrogated, taken to the basement. And nothing happened, and that was because the very man who was due to interrogate him had himself been taken away and shot. And we should remember, I think, that the Soviet Union murdered probably twice as many people, twice as many of its own people, as the Nazis. There's another person who did suffer. That was the poet Osip Mandelstam, who did die in the Gulag. Before he was sent to the Gulag, he was exiled to the city of Voronezh with his wife. Voronezh. Is there a poem hovering here, somewhere in the doomed, brutal air, between the terrified walls and the insane pipes? Is the poem tensing its muscles, wetting its lips, murmuring? Is the bare electric bulb licking it to shape? Will it alight, feathery pencil, onto the notebook secured for us by the school teacher, a risky kindness? Will my widow nurse, memorize, house, and promulgate it? The leashed dog barking in the yard, does he think life runs on like a tram? The police spy sits down unannounced. Will my poem have life? We miss the chance of the open window. The freight car clanks ever colder to the east, under the constancy of stars magnificently indifferent to the flicker in ourselves and the size of our land. The food parcel returned. Will my poem have life? And it was his widow, Nadezhda, who memorized his poetry and caused it to be published, I think, 2 or 3 decades after his death. Here's a relatively new poem, Pints. When men fall silent with the weight of their lives, and women continue to chatter like guns, a welcome tiredness settles on the beer. Grease-stained newspaper blows down the street, and the young remain hooked into the here and trivial. They are men wedded to life by sin, war, and adventure. They sit in quiet corners. Earlier, they might have called to the barmaid, "Nurse," when the man next to you explodes, the warm wetness of his blood painting your face. You don't go weeping to wife or psychiatrist. You trace out the rings stained into the table and remember orange coconuts gathered high under whispering fronds like so many testicles, and the silly tattoo on his arm, and the pleasure you took in firing back. Toot toot, beep beep. The tides suck and pout. The mountains sweat on the inside. The cliffs are performing their own abortions. And the volcano has decided to masturbate. The good earth loves herself and loathes herself. Her molten heart is wanting to explode. Her naked neck is looking for a tree. And the bubble people in their bubble cars shuffle along, toot toot, bumper to bumper, beep beep, they shuffle shortly along, toot toot, beep beep. The bubble people strut like actors. The actors strut like out-of-work actors. The out-of-work actors become poets. Toot toot, beep beep. On the side of the volcano, shrouded in sulphur, the actress is still doing her actressy thing. And below, knee-deep in lava, the poet is still doing his poety thing. Toot toot, beep beep. The boiling sea, and the gurgling earth, and the bubble people. Toot toot, beep beep. Have I got time for a couple more?
Couple more, yeah.
Let me think. I don't know. Montaigne's cat. Oh dear. Long while ago, people always thought I just wrote poems about cats, and it wasn't true. But Montaigne's cat. Montaigne being the 16th century French essayist. Yes, I should read acknowledgements to Sarah Bakewell's How to Live a Life of Montaigne, one of the best books I've read in recent years. Yes, Ms. Bakewell, I am tempted to zip out a paw and snatch at the quivering quill as it spiders across the page, but he is intent and therefore content, and I am therefore content. And he cuddles me, one of the little selves, one of the little eyes. And we are here in this solid stone wooden room with the funny writing on the beams, and I see he is chasing down his digressions much as I sometimes chase down the pattering feet of a field mouse or a dry leaf blowing in the yard. And I see he is cramming the margins, thought tumbling after thought, as the dust motes hang, weightless, in the level afternoon light. And he is intent, and therefore content. And he cuddles me, one of the little selves, one of the little eyes. And in 100 years there will be a boy called Bach, and in 200, a machine called the guillotine. And I'll finish with, I'll finish with one which is also about writers. Books. I never quite got lost in the novels of Jane Austen, chased tales of ladies down on their luck. No, I was swept by torrents of D.H. Lawrence. At least his girls knew exactly how to fry an egg.
Well, wonderful first set from Graham Buchan.
Yeah.
Okay, move on to our